Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Grand Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Grand Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Grand Group by emailing thegran, G-R-A-N, group at edinarealty.com or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Grand Group with Edina Realty, 3-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners. On this episode, David and Hoges recap the Twins' 3-game series against the Los Angeles Angels. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win. My name is David Kufis. With me today in studio is Andrew Hoganson. Dan is out in the mountains, so he's in Colorado. He was able to go to a Rockies game prior to heading out into the woods with some buddies. And we get this awkward text, Hoges, where he's like, I just love sitting next to baseball grandmas. And I'm not exactly sure what that means.
He was pretty excited about that, which it begs the question, does that hurt you a little bit? Because I feel like you're the one who normally likes going to these baseball games with him, but he said his favorite is grandmas. So, I mean, what does that say about you?
Besides his friend Joe. Yeah, besides his friend Joe. So I guess that's the ranking.
All the grandmas in the world. Joe, and then maybe you. We don't even know.
Maybe. Hopefully I make the top 3. My goodness. But anyway, procrastinating a little bit here as the Twins do drop 2 of 3 from the Angels and now sit 2.5 games back from Cleveland, tied with the White Sox for second place in the Central. Hoges, what is happening?
When I was watching the game today, the whole like last 3 innings, I was just trying to decide like what kind of mood am I going to go into this podcast with? Like, am I going to try to be upbeat and like this team just had a lot of missed opportunities and they can turn it around, or is this the start of bad things to come? I mean, 2.5 out. We've said this the whole year. There are games that they should be winning that they are blowing, and you think it evens out in a 162-game season, but man, the number's getting high. And it's frustrating. I don't really know what my feelings are, David. Should I feel good or should I feel bad?
Well, we'll get into that. We'll get into that a little bit later. A couple other notes here. I don't know when this happened, and maybe it just happened this series, but when did Bally start making the outs, the little circles, red? It'd been black for as long as I remember now.
I didn't notice it until you sent the text, and then when I turned it on, I was like, wow, they are red. And I like it a lot better. I think it's a lot easier to see and able to tell. Plus, outs, red, negative. I mean, it just kind of fits with everything.
Well, it makes sense. And, like, what would bother me about the black is, like, if there were 2 outs and, like, you didn't know, right? If somebody hadn't watched this before, they're like, is that 2 outs or does that mean there's no outs? Yeah. I don't know what this means.
Yeah, it drove me crazy at the beginning of the year because you couldn't figure it out if you just turned the game on where they were actually. If there was 1, you had a pretty decent idea, but 2 was hard.
But anyway, one last note here before we jump into the recap. You know, Barrios, I thought we treated pretty well. We traded him to a team that's contending, and all that he has to do is beat the Guardians for us when he's on the mound. No. Jose Barrios gives up 8 earned runs to the Guardians when the Blue Jays played them the other night.
These trades have worked out pretty well for the front office, and even the Barrios did on our end looks like it's going to hopefully turn out with Austin Martin and Simeon Woods Richardson. But man, we gotta hope that those guys are going to do good things for the Twins afterwards. I mean, even Rogers out there with Milwaukee, he's blowing games for us or for them. So that's kind of nice watching Milwaukee drop in the standings. But come on, Barrios, you can do better than that.
Come on, work a little harder. Anyway, all right, let's go ahead and jump into the series recap. We'll start with game 1, so at least we start on a positive, Hoges.
Series recap.
Yeah, finally a good start to the series, and honestly, the Twins win this one 4-0, and this entire game was basically the Twins' trade deadline acquisitions just showing up. I mean, you look at who pitched in this game: Malley, Fulmer, and then Duran hopped in there for a little bit, and Lopez. Malley looked great, just an awesome performance from them. And if you want to push it even farther, Urshela, who they traded for in the offseason, hit a home run in this game too.
Yeah, he had 3 hits in this game. It was basically the Urshela show, more or less. It was Malley and Urshela just leading the charge to win this one.
Yeah, and Celestino gets a 2-run shot too for his first of the year. So this was a good game. It was a good, exciting game. The pitching looked great, and you start thinking like, okay, now we're playing some lower competition. Maybe they're going to start turning things around and winning some ball games.
Yeah, it was funny though that the only guy who pitched in this game who was on the roster at the beginning of the season is the only guy from the bullpen you still want pitching for this team out of the bullpen who was on the team at the beginning of the season.
Oh, it's so frustrating. And it's too early, right? It's too early to be making those judgment calls, but it's so hard not to jump to conclusions with what we've seen so far.
Yeah, but so a very good game. Textbook pitching win, obviously. Starter goes 6, and then you go your 2 setup guys, and then your closer to close it out. Just a wonderful game from the starters and the bullpen.
I still can't get over the fact that we're talking about like a great pitching game on how you line it up, and it still is a starter leaving in the 6th inning. And I understand the analytics, and you don't want them facing the lineup the 3rd time around. So I do think it is the right call, but it's just so weird, especially like they were showing a stat today about bullpen usage that the Twins have had. And normally you expect like at least 1 or 2 of those games to only have maybe 2 bullpen guys going. Half of them, there's 5 guys pitching in these games. So it's so hard to manage that bullpen usage now in 2022.
Well, and just looking at the way that Rocco has handled the starters, like you said, there's rationale behind it. It's not just random, but at the same time, 86 pitches, a guy who's looked that good, you do think, hey, you know what, give him 1 more inning.
And when your bullpen has looked so bad, sometimes it's maybe like, well, instead of going to Pagan, why don't we have the starter go out there a little bit longer? It can't get any worse.
Well, that's a fair point. So couple other notes about this game here. Okay, my boy Tommy Watkins, right? My goodness.
Can't go an episode without mentioning him, can you? You just can't.
Okay, top of the 3rd, right? You have Sandy Leone, the track star, on second base, a base hit to left, and Watkins sends him from second base. It's like comical. Like, I mean, there was like 15 feet the throw out came before Leone was anywhere near home plate.
Do you think Watkins thought maybe it was 10 years ago where you could just bowl the catcher over? So he saw Leone just rumbling around and he was like, oh, let's do it. Let's do it.
Could have been. And then the only other note is kind of an oddity here. So Buxton's on first, Correa's at the plate, and there's a throw over to first base, and the pickoff attempt is just sails over the first baseman's head. Buxton advances to third base, but it's called back because Correa had called time right before the pitcher had made the pickoff attempt, which is just terrible luck.
Yeah, it's not something you see every day at all, where your guy at the plate, by calling time, ends up costing you 2 bases. I mean, that's why we joke about this a lot, but I think that's why baseball is such a fun sport, because you can go to the ballpark and have you ever seen that before? I mean, that's something that there's so many baseball games. No. I've never seen that happen before, and it's just kind of fun, the oddities of this great game we all love.
All right, Hogs. Well, the fun is over. Here we go. Let's go into game 2 when the downfall began. So Twins lose this one just in heartbreaking fashion. They lose it in extras in the 11th. Angels win this one 5-3. Just everything that could go wrong in this game did go wrong, Hogs.
I truly don't want to talk about this game because it just feels like the podcast that I did with Dan about the Guardian series, where basically every single game you're thinking they're going to win because they're just dominating and they don't pull it off. And this one was even more deceiving than the final score suggests. Like, not only should the Twins have won, they should have won handily. I mean, they went 0 for 14 with runners in scoring position in this game. And it was a game that by all accounts, they actually played really, really well and deserved to win. They just couldn't get 2-3 more clutch hits and get out of some innings.
Yeah, either one, right? Like either superb pitching or adequate hitting, right? Like one or the other is what we needed to win this one.
I think that's why I'm so confused about this team right now, because they clearly have a lot of talent. I mean, they do. They have Buxton, who is incredible. They have Correa, who's doing well. Their starting pitching has gotten better. Their bullpen is there, but they just can't put the pieces together, and it happens so often in these games. It's frustrating because you see it there, and you see the top of the Central with the Guardians and the White Sox is not good. Yet these games still keep slipping away, and it's becoming more of a trend than just an aberration. It makes me confused. I don't know what to think.
Yeah, so this one, it's disappointing. You squander a decent start by Bundy. He goes 5 innings pitched, no earned runs, and then you have Thielbar, Jax get through cleanly. Duran comes in, gives up a solo shot, and then your new acquisition, your supposed all-star closer Lopez comes in, gives up 2 earned runs, and then our boy Pagan, who we thought shouldn't be in these high-leverage roles, gives up the winning home run.
Yeah, and that was weird with Lopez too, because I feel like he's blown 2 saves now with the Twins, and both of them seem like they were that they were going great. I mean, 2 of the hits that Lopez gave up were on 2-strike counts when he ended up walking a guy, and then the other one gave up a hit. But it's so frustrating to see when you have a guy in the hole like that and letting them wiggle out of it, and he's getting a couple bloop singles up against him. So it's just, man, it feels like it's right there for him, and then the luck just isn't going his way. And Pagan actually had a great 10th inning. I think he only threw 3 pitches in the 10th before he came up and on like the 4th pitch gave up the 2-run shot to lose it. But he's a frustrating pitcher too, because I mean, maybe this is the theme of this episode for me. We've seen that he has great stuff with his fastball. When everything is clicking, he looks deadly. But then it's like he spaces out and loses it for 4 hitters in a row. And then he does what he does. It's just frustrating to watch with him.
I think that you can't have a haircut like that if you're not performing well. That's honestly what it comes down to for me. You can't have a cocky haircut if you're not performing well. You got to shave it off, man. Just go bald.
Right? Like that's the new baseball look, having that faux hawk or whatever. Like I agree with you. If you're not performing, you lose it. It's like Samson. If you lose your strength, you got to cut it off.
No, you got to be just generic dude. You got to be generic dude on the mound until you go 9 scoreless innings or something.
What if he unbuttoned that top button? Because I mean that's your favorite in a pitcher when he shows that strength there. I think that would give him a couple more MPHs on that fastball, and maybe we'd turn it around.
All right, couple other notes here. So Buxton almost stealing a home run from Ohtani that Duran had given up in the 8th was pretty exciting. And it was funny if you watch the replay because Duran thinks that Buxton caught it. And so he celebrates and then he doesn't.
Yeah, right. And then you realize, oh, no, I just gave up a home run.
Other note here, Polanco on third base, Urshela gets a swinging bunt. And this wasn't planned. It wasn't like a suicide squeeze or just a squeeze play. It was a swinging bunt by Urshela. Great awareness by Polanco to be able to score on that.
I think that's another thing that's frustrating me too, because we're having good base running and good fielding in these games too. It's not like they're making a lot of stupid mistakes on the field, so it's making me more optimistic about this team, I guess. I mean, we harped on them so much last year about how many errors they had and how deflating that can be for a team, and they had errors on the base paths too, and we've seen some this year, but for the most part, this series was fairly clean.
Yeah, so the only real sort of aberration to that, right, was Gordon diving for the ball in the 9th. And so he dives for a ball. Rocco even said in the press conference after the game that, he kind of needs to make sure he either has that or he needs to let it drop and let the run score without potentially giving up a second run. But at the same time, a great relay play. So Gordon gets up and he gets to the ball, throws it to Correa, and Correa just throws a strike home to Leon, who gets the runner at home.
Isn't Correa like the epitome of the hit your cutoff man? Because if you get him the ball, he's got a 98-mile-an-hour cannon that he can get out at home. And back to Gordon diving on that play too. I don't hate that as much as more baseball purists do. Like when the ball's like a shallow single and your outfielder makes a play, especially for that. I mean, that run that would score there is to tie the game anyway. So you want to keep that run off. And I appreciate that aggressiveness. And I think he's a fast guy, and I like that happens. Interesting note about the attempted inside the park home too. The Angels player Adele who hit the ball that Gordon ended up diving on and got thrown out at the plate. He's only the second player in Major League history to get thrown out at home attempting to get an inside the park homer. David, can you name who the other player was? And the hint is he was a Twins center fielder for a while.
It's got to be Gomez, right?
Ben Revere.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Right?
I truly thought I was going to get it right. That's fun.
Yeah, just an interesting stat. I mean, how often do you even attempt an inside the park homer and then to get thrown out twice in 1 year? It'd just be a bummer.
Anyway, we will talk about Buxton's diving play a little bit later in our segments, but let's go ahead and go to game 3. And this one, Hoges, starts off with a bang. Buxton has a 2-run homer. Looks like the Twins are back on track. But then they go 0 for 4 the rest of the way with runners in scoring position, and they lose this one 4-2.
Yeah, and that was continuing with the 0 for 14 from game 2. So currently they are in an 0 for 18 streak with runners in scoring position right now. So just not great. We have a few 18 losing streaks going on right now that it'd be nice of us to end one of those soon if we could. But yeah, that game starts off with Buxton hitting that opposite field home run, which is nice to see him get back on track a little bit. And you start thinking this is like those Guardians series too, where we lose just an incredibly frustrating game, and this team has shown an insane ability to bounce back, but they couldn't bring it through the rest of the way. And honestly, this game was just kind of flat the whole way through. They couldn't get anything going. They weren't even threatening. But man, we just, whenever we get a guy on base, you just feel like, well, now we're gonna get 2 outs right away. It's just how this year has kind of gone.
Yeah, well, and you would think if I told you, Hoges, at the beginning of the series, if I told you that the Angels score 9 runs in the total of the series, you probably thought there's a real good chance the Twins win at least 2 of these games.
Absolutely, especially with the offense that we have and the way that guys have been performing lately. It's just frustrating. But I think that's why I'm so confused about this series, because it still felt like they deserved to win, and yet here we are looking at another 2-3 series defeat.
So here we are, too. Archer was on the mound. goes 4 innings pitched, which is about what you can expect. 3 earned runs with 5 strikeouts. I don't quite understand what we're doing, but I guess we need a pitcher. We'll throw him on the mound. Then we go McGill, Fulmer, and then Pagan again for some reason. He's just like, I don't know.
Every
Rocco
time he comes out there, I'm like, why? Why again?
But anyway, so the Twins can't put this one away. Buxton does steal a base. I know that you had texted. You said you just love it when Buxton steals on lefties.
It's so awesome because his awareness out there is incredible. And a lot of times you think a guy's just getting picked off right there, but he clearly was going on first movement. And I love that. I love that baseball acumen where he's like, I'm fast enough. I don't care what you do. You can pick me off. I'm still going to be safe. And he was safe by a long shot, too.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So I should note, too, in Game 2, we didn't mention this. This is the first game I remember in I don't know when this season where the Twins had 3 stolen bases in one game.
And we started throwing runners out, too, with Sandy Leone back there, too. Are we turning back into the Piranhas, David?
That seems to be what's happening. Except for they still scored runs, I think, was the thing as the Piranhas.
That is true. And Buxton, too, like he made a couple of good aggressive base running plays, and then when he tagged up from second, I mean, it was an easy tag, but every time he runs fast, when he gets to the base, he looks like he died a little bit. And I know his knee is killing me, but it's still amazing to me how fast that guy can run. And I think he just blacks out for a little bit. And then whenever he gets to the base, it's like, oh, no.
Just he gets that adrenaline to go so he can't feel the pain. And then it like settles once he can calm himself.
And my heart has finally allowed myself to not think that he is broken after every single one of those, where I just know like, okay, that's what he is right now. Like his knee isn't just, it's going to be like that. But at the beginning of the year, whenever he'd do that, I'd be like, oh, no, IL. But now it's more just like, yeah, I'm not surprised by that. But what he is powering through this year and still with the stats that he is producing is heroic, frankly, for this team. And they need it. I mean, where would they be without him?
Who knows, man? So one last note here on Game 3. There was kind of an interesting play, and sort of you can see the dynamic between a veteran and a rookie. So there's a runner on second, and Correa is playing shortstop. Miranda's playing third, arises at first. And there's a bouncer hit up to Correa, and it's got some decent speed. It's not like, it's not super sharply hit, but it's still got a little bit of speed to it. And Correa looks to third, and Miranda's not covering. And so he has to go to first for the out. And you can see Correa like coming over to Miranda being like, dude, you needed to be at the bag right there. We could have gotten the lead runner.
Yeah, and so that run eventually comes over to score on a sacrifice fly. So, I mean, that ended up being a huge play. And I'll be honest, I was still mad about the fact that they called that a foul ball because the runner who eventually was on third there and scored, I thought should have been out on the grounder. It was a swinging bunt that they called foul, and it didn't look like it hit the plate on replay. But back to your point, it's one of the things that I love about Carlos Correa is where he cares about every aspect of the game, too, and he's not afraid to kind of get in a guy's face per se, but just that was a moment where like, hey, Miranda, you got to cover third, and seeing that frustration, but still, I don't know, using it as a teaching moment a little bit is why this guy's going to be building this championship culture here for years to come.
I knew it was coming. I knew the championship culture and the lengthening of the contract reference was coming.
Did you watch his catch with Audra thing that they posted on Bally Sports North? He's staying here, man. He the Juicy Lucy's in Minnesota are going to be enough to keep him here to stay.
Yeah, money has nothing to do with it.
Nothing. Not at all. Who does their job for money anyways?
I mean, the thing is, every time you say this, I think, oh, that's just ridiculous. But then again, he's on the team right now. I mean, what do I know?
Right.
Like,
just keep signing him to 1 year, $35 million contracts and see how it goes.
See how it goes. I mean, technically, he's still on the books for next year, Hoges. Like, if you go to the contract tracker, it'll show you that he's still under contract with the Twins.
Believe it or not, the year after that as well.
Okay, with that, let's go ahead and jump into our segments to return, Hoges, to the way that things ought to be.
Catch 'em all, Kirby Puckett!
Puckett's Picks winner.
Finally, Hoges, finally. This was like my longest losing streak in a long time. But why don't you go ahead and give the scores? Dan's not here. I usually like to gloat when he gives the scores, but you're going to have to fill in this time.
I would like to point out first that I blame Dan for my pick on this series because he picked Miranda for me because I was sleeping when you guys actually made the pick because you decided to record at like 2 a.m. I still would have picked Miranda, but that is a completely unimportant detail. So we're going to blame Dan for this loss. But David ended up winning with Arise. He got 7 points, which was even less than his 8 to 10 that we say he's normally going to get. Dan took Buxton and got 6. Dan also took Miranda and got 0. So
No, you took Miranda.
No, Dan took Miranda.
Oh,
I would have picked Correa if we can have hindsight here.
All right, so season standings here. I am back in the lead, one above Dan at 14. Dan's at 13, and the listeners are at 9. Season point totals, again, just in honor of Dan not being here. Dan is still leading the way pretty healthily with 194 points. I have 169, and the listeners are down at 151.
I got cocky. I let those 2 wins get to my head, and I started bragging a little bit too much on a 2-game winning streak. So I apologize for that. We're not going to do that anymore. We're gonna buckle down, and we're gonna just grind some victories out now.
So I should note too, I've only picked Arise 3 times this season. But every time I've picked him, he's won when I've picked him.
You made comments like Correa about that in the past, and then you went like 0 for 15 with him. So, yeah, keep talking. Did you not learn from what I just said? Whenever you show hubris, it falls away.
Pride comes before a falleth, Hoges. That's in the Bible,
truth?
I'm pretty sure. All right, well, let's keep pushing here. Beast versus bench.
Beast versus bench.
Is losing fun? Is losing fun?
Well, go ahead, Hoges. Who do you got on your Beast moniker there?
I picked Correa. He's starting to hit for a little bit more. He got another homer in Game 2. He ended up getting 2 hits in Game 3 with a walk. I think he's starting to show what his batting average is going to be like with the 270, with hitting for a little bit more power. And he had some great plays out in the field, too, with throwing out that runner on that relay throw. So I went with Correa here. It's hard to find a lot of silver lining in a series like this, but I thought Correa still performed pretty admirably.
Yeah, I think that's a fair pick. I'm going to go with Tyler Mahle. I just think to have that starter come in, do a good job, 6 innings, no earned runs, just great to see, and sort of makes me less tense when I'm watching the game to like try and math out who's left in the bullpen that can give some length. Like, you got through 6 innings. They should be able to handle 3, right?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good pick, picking a guy who only played in 6 out of the 27 innings, where that's really what you wanna go home on.
Every time. Did he pitch the winning game for the Twins in this series, or did he not, Hoges?
He did. Would you give him the win in that game then with his 6 innings pitch? I mean, you have to, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, by the min for the win standard of tracking wins, I would 100% give him the win.
The min for the win standards, which are completely made up and change every single game.
No, they don't change. And first of all, he won, for the record, the official wins and loss stats gave him the win anyway. Like, it's not like ours would be any different. And in this instance, of course, I would have given him the win.
So who do you give the loss to in Game 2 then?
Who do I give the loss to in game 2?
Would you give it to Pagan or would it be Lopez?
No, I'd probably give it to Lopez in that instance because he's the only reason why the team had a chance to win.
I wanted to argue with you, but that's what I would have said too.
See, this, you may argue that this is subjective, but it's not, because anybody with half a brain can look at these box scores and figure out who needs the wins and the losses.
Isn't it by definition subjective though when you can't define it?
It's not subjective in the postmodern sense that if enough people agree, then it's the actual truth.
That is Twitter culture to a T, folks, right there. If you ever want to know how Twitter works, just listen to that. That was it.
It doesn't matter if it's objectively true. It just matters if enough people agree that it's correct.
And then it becomes objective after that.
Postmodern baseball. It's got to be the title of this episode.
Now I'm just depressed.
Okay. With that, who you putting on your bench there, Hoges?
This was a tough one, too, because a lot of guys had games where individually they didn't play that well. I mean, Buxton had some stinkers at the beginning with strikeouts and everything, but then he made some good plays in the field, and then he got the homer in Game 3, so I couldn't give it to him. I ended up giving it to Kepler because he is not producing at the plate. And like Dan loves to say, we have 5 toes for a reason. So there's clearly a problem with him still. And
you guys only have 5 toes? You guys should get that looked at.
10 toes, 5 toes on each foot.
There it is.
But yeah, something is still clearly wrong with that foot that isn't enabling him to, I don't know if it's to get up enough power when he's at the plate or just swing without pain, but he looks off and it feels weird that we keep trotting him out there.
Yeah, 0 for 28 is the current streak that he's on. And honestly, you have to start thinking it's time. Put him on the IL, try and get him sorted out, but like, you can't keep doing this because it's just a wasted at bat.
I mean, 0 for 28 is not good, right? Like that. I mean, that's bad, right? Like real bad.
That's like only having 5 toes. It's terrible.
Real rough.
Yeah, I'm also giving it to Kepler. I think he's the right choice in this instance. But with that, let's go to Rocco's Rewind.
Rocco's Rewind.
My question is, why do we keep seeing Pagan so much? Like every time he comes on to pitch, it's like, why? And so I want to know, Rocco, like, why are we calling on Pagan? Even in these, like today, when you're down 2 runs, why is Pagan pitching there? That's I know it's not high leverage and maybe not even medium leverage, but it's at the minimum high-low leverage. Don't we have other guys that can come pitch in those situations? Yeah, like high-low. Like you're in the high end of the low. Are these hand motions working too that I'm making while I'm explaining?
Very helpful. The listeners will appreciate it, I'm sure, Hoges.
But yeah, I just don't get it. He keeps blowing all these games, and eventually it has to be on Rocco for enabling him to keep pitching. But like I said before, he had a great bottom of the 10th when he got out of that inning on 3 pitches. I mean, part of that was saved by Buxton making just an unbelievable catch. But I don't know. I don't get it. We're seeing way too much of him in these games, and I think he just needs to come in 10-1 games for a while here.
Aaron Gleeman tweeted this out. Pagan has given up 18 homers in his last 52 innings of work. That is 1.8 homers per 9 innings, which is the worst in the history of baseball for any reliever.
So is that bad too? Like, is that a bad stat? Because that seems real bad.
That is real rough here. I mean, the Turtle has a better line, I think, when it comes to home runs per 9.
And Nick Gordon as well this year, I imagine. But I'll be honest with you, I don't want to DFA him yet because I still think that he has something to give. But just I want to see him once every 2 weeks for a little bit.
Well, I mean, they finally cut bait with Duffy, so we'll have to see what happens with Pagan.
And I agree with that decision to do that to Duffy before doing it to Pagan because Pagan still has better raw stuff. But if this doesn't change soon, then he needs to follow suit as well. Because if you look at how many games that he has cost us this year, we'd be in first place by 10 games. And that's that's hyperbole. Well, what's your question for Rocco, David?
So what I don't understand, if you have a series like this where you know you're going to have Bundy and Archer both having starts.
I believe they are called Barcher now. Barcher is the correct term.
Yes. Excuse me. When you're having Barcher make these starts, why aren't you using Sands in one of these games for length? Isn't that the whole reason he's in the pen is to come in when these guys are only giving you 4 or 5 innings?
So Dan made mention of this on the last podcast. I actually did go back and listen to our season opening predictions, and we talked about the piggyback starter a lot because that's what we thought was going to happen at the beginning of this year. And they've only done it 2 or 3 times, and to me, it seems like it's worked every single time. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't understand why we're not doing that. And it seems like it saves your bullpen, and it gives Sands a better chance to know, like, hey, I'm coming in and I'm pitching 3 innings in this game. These are the guys I'm going to be facing. I can develop a game plan for them. It makes so much sense on paper. I don't understand why we aren't going with that. It doesn't make sense. Plan ahead.
Shouldn't be that difficult. Well, let's keep going here, Hoges. Minnesota moment.
Minnesota moment.
So I'll start us off here. It's a little bit of a bummer because it's coming from a loss, but Buxton's catch in the bottom of the 10th inning in game 2 and then doubling up Ohtani was just a ridiculous play. So there's a runner on third, there's a runner on first. The outfield is playing in because obviously you have to stop the run from scoring or the game is over. From the perspective of like watching the pitch go in and then the contact with the hit, I thought, oh, this is a hit, game over. And like even everybody in the stands thought this game was over. They're all cheering. Buxton makes a ridiculous diving catch, and then on top of that, has the awareness not to throw just into the infield anywhere to stop the runner from going home on a tag. He doubles up Ohtani at first because he sees that Ohtani's like at second base. So Miranda goes to cover first, and then he gets a double play out of it. It's just a ridiculously good baseball play on a lot of levels.
It was an unbelievable catch, especially, I mean, we talked about Gordon missing that play. I mean, Buxton had to lay out because if that ball drops, game's over. And when you're coming in on a diving line drive like that, playing center field, that is the most difficult catch to make in all of baseball.
All right, well, what do you have for your moment, Hoges?
I'm going to go with Buxton as well. I'm going to go with his steal in game 3 that we talked about earlier. I love that because I think it was so premeditated. If he had just gotten picked off and it felt like it was just a mistake on his part that he ended up catching them in a mistake, but it felt so planned, and I love to see that out of him, just being completely aggressive and almost that cockiness. Like, I don't care what you do, I'm stealing this base. You can throw home, you can throw to first, it's going to happen. And I love seeing that out of him. I think that's what makes him such an exciting ball player. And it feels like he's kind of accepted the fact that his knee is what it is at this point, and he's going to give it all he's got every game he has a chance to play. And I mean, that's why I love watching the guy.
I think a lot of people would agree with you there. So let's go to Mauer's musings.
I just don't know how it can get any better.
Mauer's musings.
So, Hogs, why don't you start us off? Because I think yours is more rhetorical than anything, and then we'll get into a little bit philosophical discussion with my question.
It really is. But so it's undeniable that this team got better at the deadline. We picked up the starter we needed. We picked up the 2 relievers that we needed. So my question is, why are we playing worse? Why are we dropping in the standings? Like, what is happening? This team has talent.
It's very confusing, right? Because, like you said, the team got better, but it just seems like the offense all of a sudden can't put it together. And it does seem as though you would think spirits would be so high because the front office made every move possible. Like literally, I don't know what else you could possibly ask for. Like, without giving away the farm or outside of giving up what the Mariners had to give up to get Castillo. And we didn't want them to do that, but they did everything they asked for. This team should be riding high, knowing that this front office believes in a postseason run. You got to start putting it together.
Yeah, they did everything that they needed. This is a incredibly constructed team, and to just see them keep dipping like this, you hope they turn it around. But man, it's getting late.
Yeah, the time is definitely ticking away, and they need to start winning some games and get back to the lead of the Central. All right, so my question has to do with some sort of sad news for baseball. Tatis Jr. for the Padres, the shortstop, oft injured, unfortunately, recently got suspended for PED use. And he said a couple of things that basically he had ringworm, and so he needed to take some stuff, and he's really bummed that happened to have anabolic steroids in it.
Who would have thought?
But so it's very sad. He got an 80-game suspension. But so here's the deal. Because he's injured so often and because he was working back from injury at this time, I do wonder, you got to think the motivation here is he's just trying to get back to health as soon as possible to help his team. So my question, Hogs, is a little bit, I don't know how to say it because it could be a terrible take, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Would you be okay with players using steroids, or let's just call them banned substances, so like that kind of runs the gambit of what it could be. Players using banned substances in order to get back to health faster, but then having to stop once they reach a baseline level of health, whatever the subjective measure is there. But like we talked about, everything's objective if you try hard enough.
I think this is an interesting question. And first, I think we can say that we're all in agreement that he didn't take it for ringworm. I mean, he took it in order to get better. And
yes,
it is hard because if medicine is going to help you, I mean, a steroid is a medicine. That's why they were originally developed. If this is going to help you heal faster, it's hard to argue with that. But like you kind of alluded to it already. The problem is what's that definition? Because like after game 40, no one's healthy anymore. And that's a lot of reasons why guys were taking steroids, is just to be able to have that extra jump and that longevity to make it through the grind that is a 162-game season. So I think it's an interesting thought, but as our testing and everything currently stands, it's impossible. It's impossible to enforce and impossible to have that baseline deal. But it is super sad to see, because you have to assume that is why he was taking it. It wasn't necessarily to improve his performance. It was just to get him back on the field faster. And that Padre team is a fun team to watch. And he's a great fun player to have.
Yeah, and so I just kept thinking about the baseline level of health and like Mark McGuire. Like, well, I'm just not quite there.
Yeah,
like he can't buy shirts that fit. He's like, Doc, I'm just not back to health yet.
I'm only in a double XL. I need to be in a triple XL. We gotta get bigger.
One of the top 5 interviews in all of sports history, when the interviewer's like, yeah, but your stats like significantly declined once you stopped taking steroids. They really didn't play into my game that much. What are you talking about?
They completely did. On the subject of steroids, David, the home run record for a single season, Aaron Judge is going to be very close to breaking Roger Maris's 61 record, which is currently the American League record. And some baseball purists would say Major League Baseball's record, because they aren't counting Sosa, they aren't counting McGuire, they aren't counting Bonds. What is your home run record?
Oof. It's tricky, right? Because I'm not really the era guy. You know, the people who want to like, oh, well, that was just the steroids era, so it's okay. I do think that there's an asterisk on those totals that were boosted by juicing. And so to me, I think 61 is the natural number. And if, like me personally, if you said, hey, which stat would you rather have? Well, you'd rather have the natural stat, right? And so that's why, to me, I'd say that if Judge gets over 61, I think he owns that record. And I think, and like you said, in a lot of guys' eyes, he definitely will.
Yeah, I would say that Bonds is the single season home run record holder and overall. I think he is. It's his record. Did he cheat? Absolutely. Does he deserve that record? Nope. But it's not a perfect world that we live in. I don't care what era it was. He cheated. There's an asterisk next to it. But I do agree with the thought that if Judge breaks the 61 record, that's still pretty cool. Now, is he first in my book? Technically, I'm doing air quotes right now. No, he's not. Bonds did it, but Bonds did cheat. But you can't go back and just scrub the record books of all of these guys because they didn't catch him during when this was happening enough to be able to enforce anything to change it. So it is what it is. It's kind of like the Astros. They still won the 2017 World Series. Did they deserve it? No. Did they cheat? Yeah, absolutely. But you still can't. It's an imperfect game that we play. So I think it is cool that he is chasing that, though.
All right, well, let's grade this series, Hogs.
Series grades.
Looks like we match up. Look at that. What are we giving the series there, Hogs?
I'm giving it a D. I don't think you can give them much else. They didn't play well enough to get a C. They didn't play bad enough to get an F. It was just kind of blah. They didn't win. I mean, they easily could have won all three of these games, I think, if they get a couple more bounces their way or get some hits with runners in scoring position. But I can't say that they deserved to win all three by any means. But they still played okay, and game one was a great 4-0 shutout. So I'm giving them a D.
Yeah, I think the D is the right call. You have to give them something because they won a game, but my goodness, I was real close to giving them an F just because I was so frustrated with the lack of offensive production.
I don't know, Jack. It looked like Herbeck pulled him off the bag.
Herbie's headlines.
Really cool moment. A guy named Wynton Bernard for the Colorado Rockies, after playing a gajillion games in the minors. He's basically Bull Durham in this instance here. But so he finally gets called up to the majors at age 31, and they caught his phone call to his mom informing her of this on video. Really heartwarming moment. And like, it's really cool too because the Rockies won the game and he had his first hit in the game. Really, really cool moment. If you haven't seen that video, you got to look it up.
Yeah, he was in the minors for 10 years before he got called up to the majors. And that's why we talk about baseball being such a romantic game all the time. And I think these are awesome moments because being in the minors is rough. They don't make hardly anything. I mean, guys at AAA are pulling in $75,000 a year, $50,000 a year. And the travel is awful. The hotels are awful. I mean, you have to deal with all of that. And you're doing it for just one shot. I mean, you know you're not going to be making a career out of being a Major League Baseball player at this point when you're 31 years old. But to be able to see him get that chance to just get up there and play a few games is awesome. It's hard not to love moments like that.
And I think that's sort of what makes baseball interesting, right? Because you have like that, what was that guy's name, the pitcher who was like 49 and still throwing fastballs?
I just refer to him as the rookie. I don't actually know what his name was.
Shoot, Jamie something. I don't know. Anyway, but so baseball's interesting in that there's a lot more development work, like both in basketball and in football. Like out of college, you're likely on that starting rotation. Like you're in those sports when it comes to basketball and football. But with baseball, it's a developmental sport, and you can be in the minors for a long time before you get your shot. But like 31, it's kind of like one of those things where, Hogs, I know you're still thinking, I could probably still make the Twins eventually. And like the real turning point, though, Hogs, is when it switches from you could still play baseball to, well, I could still make the PGA Tour. Like, that's when you know, like, you've gotten the next age level.
Right? Absolutely. But I think that's what's so awesome about this, because you can see guys develop for so long, and baseball has so many, like, layered storylines. Like, this isn't a story that is going to impact wins and losses for a playoff team or anything like that, but it's a cool story, and there's just so much associated with all of that. I mean, what do they have now? They have high A, low A, rookie ball, double A, triple A. I mean, there's so much development that happens in baseball, and then to see a guy make it all the way through that for that long and get his chance is awesome. And I know I'm getting close to the PGA, but we're still hoping for baseball. Dan, on the other hand, Dan might be in PGA status.
Dan already bought a new set of clubs, I think, here.
There's still guys on the Twins who are older than me. They still exist.
That's all it takes. Hi, Hogs. Let's do it. Puckett's picks for the upcoming Royals series. Hopefully the Twins can return to some winning ways.
And we'll see you tomorrow night.
Puckett's picks.
I'm going to pick Correa. I ended up giving him the beast this series because I think he's starting to turn it around is the wrong phrase to use for him, but he did see like he went through a kind of extended slump where he wasn't producing as much. And in these 3 games, it seemed like he really came around and he's starting to get hot at the plate. I think I stuck with Miranda a little bit too long, so I'm going with Correa now.
Seems like a good choice. Dan, who lost last episode, obviously, is going to take a rise, which I'm a little bit disappointed because that was my plan. So I got to take Buxton. He's going to be at home. I think that he mashes against the Royals. It should be a good time.
But it was between Buxton and Correa for me, so I can't fault you for that one at all.
Wonderful. Well, I think that's going to do it for us, Hoges. Thanks for filling in. I think we go Hogesless here for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm a little bit sad. It's been a lot of fun being on these episodes a lot. I feel like I got into more of a rhythm, and it's always great talking to you and Dan about baseball. It's definitely made this year a lot of fun for me, and I appreciate you guys for having me. It's been a blast, and I'm excited to listen to the 2 of you get after each other for a while.
Yeah, always. All right, well, I'll send us out. Well, folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on Twitter at Min for the Win and find our Min for the Win Facebook page. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are available. And if you could leave us a rating, that'd be great. A reminder that episodes are now available on our YouTube channel. And if you could drop us a like and subscribe, we'd greatly appreciate it. Thanks for listening. And as always, go Twins. That'll wrap up another episode of Min for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, 2 avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.